Well, hello, hello. We're a little bit early, but who doesn't love to get started on a Friday? Wrap this up and take a good afternoon to enjoy the weekend. But I am Crystal Williams, the co founder and lead strategist at Lemon Seed Marketing. And joining me today on our webinar is my brother. That's the last time I'll say it, but my brother Trey from McWilliams. He and I work together at McWilliams and Son Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing in East Texas. But Trey is now the founder of Blue Cardinal, a serial entrepreneur guy, all around great a guy to talk about operations and business with. And so, as I have been talking to a bunch of new customers and being during show season, as I say, at all the service worlds and all the events that are going on, I've really come to the conclusion that operations is such a challenge for so many contractors. And so, I had this idea to like, hey, let's talk about Trey, how you kind of at what points you made bigger moves, what you were using to use, us like what numbers, things like that he was using. So behind the scenes today, I have Madison off of the Lemon Seed team. She is moderating the chat, so please feel free to chat. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what services you're in. We love to know who's actively watching. We try to use those sometimes as examples when we're giving examples. So let us know where you're from there. And then before we get started as well, Madison will be dropping our link to sign up for our Lemon Seed conference, which is at the end of January here in Lufkin. Trey plays a big part of that conference. And so if you want to talk marketing and how it plays with operations, I would love for you to be at the Lemon Seed conference at the end of January in Lufkin, Texas. So let's get going. So Trey, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to join.
He was so excited. No, he is. He's a good sport about it. So Trey and I have just been together in South Carolina at Stephanie and David Postel's event, We Mean Business, and it was just full of authentic contractors doing great things. So it really kind of spurred us about this today. So I thought I would just start off, Trey, talking a little bit about just chaos in general, right? So I think a lot of times I see contractors just they feel like a lot of things are very chaotic. Maybe they feel like their team might be a little out of control or their operations. And, how can they just start, where do they get started with processes or creating systems that give them a little bit of peace and strategy?
Yeah. Well, I think in these businesses, there's always going to be chaos. There's always going to be things that are broken. So I think, putting a plan together, knowing what you're trying to accomplish. I think that's a lot of it, Crystal, is just starting with the end in mind. What is the goal here? And to make sure you're starting to build, the business to solve for that. And also like reminding yourself, when there is pain, that it's worth going through. So I think a lot of people, when I talk to them, really don't know what they're trying to accomplish in their business. They just have a business. So I think that would be, at a very high level, what are we trying to accomplish?
Right. So what are we trying to do? So, and different contractors have different end goals. Whether it's, hey, I plan on doing this for a long time. I'm 25. I'm ready to rock and roll, or I want to build this for my family. Or, I mean, I had a contractor the other day be like, listen, I'm in here and I'm out of here in 5 years. I want to build something. I want to scale it fast. And, when they have a clearer vision, honestly, even for people like Lemon Seed, it's easier for us to be able to help you, like even your budget matters, right? A lot of things matter. So I definitely think that is a passionate thing for people to get behind, like recognizing their passion of why are you even in business and what is your end goal, and start preparing for that. And there's no right or wrong answer, but when you allow, I think the technicians or the installers or the plumbers or whatever you got, the roofers, whatever, to run the business like you're paralyzed by them. I think that makes scaling, it makes being profitable, it makes being efficient extremely easy, right? So I know you maybe have interacted with that before. Like, what do we do with these teams when maybe what would you advise would be maybe your first step if like the team is just maybe running amok a little bit, just everybody's kind of doing their own thing?
Well, I think back to what are we trying to build, right? And understanding the timeline of that. And, so I think there is like this high level of, we call it an exit strategy. But I don't think anybody starts out with an exit strategy per se. But it's really like, what type of business do I want to be a part of? And, whether retail, service, replacement business, plumbing, HVAC, getting discipline on there. And then from that is really starting to, how do I solve for the labor piece of my business? 'Cause I think what you're talking about there is like, there's so many people in a hostage situation where
Mhm.
they're paralyzed because the consequences of making certain decisions fall on the shoulders of those people, and they're
Mhm.
already overwhelmed. And so I think there's a couple different thought processes on that, and one of them is, when you're in the fight, um, you gotta tolerate certain things. And there's some short-term fixes. Maybe you can hire someone that's from in the industry, and they're going to come with baggage, but they're going to bridge this gap. But it always goes back to, like, what is the end goal? And the end goal is like not to be in that situation again. So there's this long-term strategy of solving for that I'm going to find this profile person, but in the meantime, I'm going to tolerate this. But I know, unfortunately, those people have an expiration date on them, because as soon
Mhm.
as I find that replacement, I'm going to replace them.
And I think, I like to encourage contractors here. Like a lot of you are just really good technicians, right? Or, your husband was a really good technician and now you are running this company together, or vice versa, lots of ways there. I think the hardest part about leadership is actually building out a vision past tomorrow. Right. So I'm even guilty of that. Like I live very much in the today. And so a lot of times it's like looking up and looking out at your business, like, okay, what can I tolerate? Like you said, what can I tolerate right now? But knowing that I'm actively working towards an end goal there of turning this around. And, you and I've talked about this again on the stage, but I do remember like when you were taking over from our dad, and, my dad is very much like me. We're very tempered the same way of like, we're not super confrontational. So sometimes it is a lot of times, especially on culture side, if you're not careful, that lack of confrontation will allow few people to kind of, fester and cause problems. But honestly, what happens when you lead with resilience and with confidence, what does the people that can't quite get on board with your culture, your processes, your rules, if you will, they begin to become the odd man out, right? They begin to become the person that is literally just sticking out like a sore thumb. And so I think there's so much power in just harnessing that as the leader, getting it in your mind, having that mindset that you are going to lead the team through chaos. You will. You don't have a choice. You have to pick up and lead through chaos. But, another thing, Trey, that I think contractors really struggle with is, quote unquote, they hear this all the time, but I don't know if they know what to do with it. Quote, knowing your numbers, right? What KPIs are important? What do you track? And you said something to me one time on a podcast, I think, or no, it was to me and Emily when we were planning for Lemon Seed. You said, don't put out KPIs that y'all aren't willing to really put the resources in place, nor can y'all actively track it and it be true and measurable. So, we wanted to have all these fancy KPIs, and you're like, how are y'all going to actually measure that and do that? So I know you've preached on that before about the importance of contractors knowing those numbers.
Yeah, I think simplifying the operation, right? And simplifying the operation means, like, we have measurable things that we actually can influence, and we actually have confidence that it's factual, and we lead the organization and we hold them accountable for those things. And I think, so many times I see different organizations they do too many things and they're not good at any of them. So, understanding what's important in your business and what really moves the needle in the business. And I think level setting on those, making sure you can track those consistently, and then train for those things and make sure your people know that this is what's important. And over time, you're going to continue to layer on more. Typically at scale, we're going to layer on more, but the reality is there's people that's going to be very focused on a certain set of KPIs. So overall, as a company, you're tracking a lot of different things, but individually, there's typically 3 to 4 KPIs that any individual should be measured to, and not 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can overwhelm, and especially if you start not hitting them, you're like, gosh, I'm not hitting anything. So if you were, back in the day when, let's say, when you were at 3, 4, $5 million as a contractor, what were some of those specific KPIs that maybe each morning that you had your eyes on as a owner contractor?
Yeah. Well,
I didn't prepare you for that question.
No, well, I think there's a lot of there's so zooming out here, like we are in the lead gen business. That is like so nothing happens till there is a call booked and ideally a quality call booked, right? So what I really want to understand is, what are what is our call expectations on a daily basis, and then of that, how many of those do we expect to be of age? And this is speaking from the HVAC world. So how many how many calls am I looking for on my call screen, and of those, how many do I want to be over 10 years or older? So my benchmark is that we want 30% of our calls to be an opportunity call. So if we have 10 calls booked today, I expect 3 of them to be a replacement opportunity. So that I start there, right, which is very top of the funnel. And then the very bottom of that funnel, from a revenue standpoint, I expect of those 3 calls at 30%, I expect 25% of those to be installed, right? So, I know, if I look at the call screen and I see there's 3 leads on there, then I expect there to be an install book for the following day. So I think just like that's very high level there. We in the average ticket, and all those things are important, but they all come after this, after the sale is done. And so I think those would be if there was 3 things I tracked every day today, it'd be what is my projected call count? What's my actual call count of that? How many opportunity calls did I have, and how many did I install? And that's where I would live at early on.
Yeah, and then we at Limit Seed, we talk a lot about your average ticket on service demand calls and average ticket on installs. And so, a lot of times, and this sounds so simple as a marketer. I live this thought process, but I was visiting with some people recently at a show, and I was like, if do contractors really understand the better your average ticket is, the less calls that you're forced to run, that you're like held hostage to run to hit your numbers. And so, like, the benefit of really getting your team members on board to understand, like, there's no reason we shouldn't be more trained well on the importance of maintenance clubs, the importance of upselling higher end equipment, full system replacements, and things like that. Or even on like the pest control and roofing side, like, being able to upsell to higher quality products or more reoccurring services. And so I think a lot of times our contractors focus only on the lead gen and nothing on the internal side, like those average tickets and things like that. But, I don't want it to appear overwhelming to the contractor either. So how do you feel about the average tickets? Like what do you think you watch on those the most?
Well, I think zoom back out a little bit, like, I care about conversion rate first, and then we'll talk about average ticket. But last thing I want is a increase in average ticket of 10%, but I lose a 10% in my conversion rate, right? So conversion rate is very important because, $1 million times nothing is still nothing. So your conversion rate is extremely important. So that's where I start first. But when I look at the service side of the business and average ticket, those things are very important. They tell a lot of stories. They don't just tell a story, are we upselling? They tell a story how many times we're getting told no service at all, right? So $0 tickets, diagnostics only. And a lot of times people focus on, hey, I want to move the call from, my average ticket's $450 and we want to move it to $550. We got to offer more stuff. And the reality is really where you're going to pick up is making sure it's not about more stuff for the customers that's already converting at 450. What's driving down your average is typically the customers that's telling you no, thank you whatsoever. So, instance would be, hey, Trey, why'd you only have an $80 ticket on that call? As I talk with a technician, well, they wanted to replace. Yeah, but they didn't. So why didn't we at least do the repair? Why didn't we get the repair? And focusing on those type of things will drive your average ticket up. But a lot of times it feels like, and we've been guilty of this, like we just add pressure to selling more stuff. Like, are you offering IAQ? I noticed you only offered 1 option. We want you to offer 3.5 options per, and like that's what we focus on. And a lot of times, like, wait a minute, why we got $0 tickets and diagnostic onlys? And if we can just solve for those are customers that didn't have it, either didn't trust what we told them, wrong customer. Like there's a lot to unpack with why someone would only pay us $80 to go tell them to, and they essentially paid $80 for us to tell us to leave. Right. So I would focus on that if I was, I think all the other stuff's important, right? The add-on sales,
Sure.
but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that is the responsibility of the tech. There's no argument that they should be fixing someone's unit when they call you and say their unit's broken.
No, I love that. So, and I'm guilty of this because as a marketer, I always love to come up with the fun stuff, the flashy stuff, and IQ bundles and things like that. When really, this is such a good point. Like, just go look at those $0 tickets. So, I mean, like if you're running direct mail campaigns, which McWilliams did this for a while, like we're running campaigns around, tune-up offers, right? That is the goal to get you in the house. But if all you do is that low-cost tune-up, that's technically a $0 ticket. The goal is to build a relationship with them, hopefully get you on the maintenance program and identify any future issues and opportunities. Is it of age equipment and things like that? I think that's definitely an important piece there is going back to, instead of looking at how to sell more to the same people, how do we go back and capture the people that we sold nothing to? So that's a great thought out there.
I mean, when I look at a service call, we run a service call. We're doing it for a couple of right? We trying to drive average ticket. It's number one, right? We need revenue. We're trying to tee up, future revenue, which means we ran a low dollar tune up, but we got on our maintenance contract, right? Or we're trying to create capacity for our peak season. So we're trying to pull, problem children, customer that's had an ongoing callback issue. We're trying to pull that call into the off season when we have capacity. And so it may be a lower dollar ticket, maybe a $0, maybe a diagnostic only. But what we're trying to do at all times is drive average ticket, tee up future revenue, or create capacity for our peak season. And, and as long as we're doing those three things, we're going to be successful.
Yeah. And again, it's paying attention to the things that matter, and again, we can all get distracted with flashy things and this person said this, but really it all comes back when I see contractors growing their business. As much as I would love to stick a lemon seed badge on them, like you grew because of us, we were just a part of the equation. It's things like this, like buckling down on these, it's really going to grow your business.
I think when we look at gaining market share, right? Like meaning, you're taking it from another contractor in your market, and the contractors are the best they are all year at answering the phone, getting a tech out there timely, and having a great experience with the tech when we're slow. And so if we try to grab market share when we're slow, most of our competition, they're delivering great customer service. So when can we take market share? We can take market share during peak season when they're lacking capacity. The only way we can do that, though, is we're in shoulder season right now. Like, what are we doing today to create capacity for the peak season? And that's like moving all these calls. The reason you have maintenance contracts is like it is to solve for revenue during the off season, but it's also to take revenue out of peak season, move it into the slower season so that you create capacity to go gain market share in the peak season. So, right now, like if I'm, our focus is controlling cost, maximizing every opportunity, and creating capacity for the peak season.
So this is also something that we see a lot of. So, when we just do an overall evaluation of the client, I have clients all the time that are running maintenance agreements during July when they're an HVAC company, or like, pest control, you're running other things during mosquito season, right? So this is all applicable to whatever business that you have. You can't be running maintenance for a plumbing company during a freeze, right? So, but what I see that is because it's lack of planning. And so you turned away a demand call on a 10-year-old system because somebody needed their free semi-annual tune-up. When you say it out loud, you're like, that sounds ridiculous, but we do it all the time.
Or there's a callback on a certain type of thermostat that you put 400 of them in, and instead of being proactive, and there's a problem with them, instead of being proactive and taking care of those during the off season, you just let them happen naturally. Well, when they're going to happen Friday at 5:30 is when they're going to happen, and it creates a bad experience for your employee. It's a bad experience for your customer, and it takes paying capacity away from you. all because you just fail to like take action of like obvious things that's in your business that you can solve for to create a better employee and customer experience.
Yeah, again, if you prioritize the customer's experience and the employee experience, like it is a challenge. So don't get me wrong; it's hard to serve two masters there. Like you kind of have to choose: are you going to be, customer focused or employee focused? But there is a happy median out there that allows you to do both. Again, we're all talking about planning ahead here, and keeping those things clear, consistent communication. Though is going to reduce, hopefully, when you talk to your team and you communicate clearly like your expectations, and you're thinking in a forward way, you reduce callbacks. Hopefully you can reduce the frustration with your technicians. And using scripts and templates and routines normally create reliability. And I know back in the day, now things are a little different now that you've scaled to multiple locations, but I say back in the day, we were running monthly team meetings where we met with our teams and we would go over like, we were very transparent with our numbers. We shared, ticket goals and all of that. And it energized the team when we were doing that. Did you agree to that? Like, or you agree when we were doing that? I know you didn't love my crazy games
Oh,
that I would
no,
try to do.
actually, I just got off the phone with my CMO and we were chatting about the importance of internal marketing, right? Our first customers are our employees and their families. And if they don't believe in the product that we're presenting externally, marketing, like it's not going to be successful. And that's a couple things. It's believing in the product. It's probably having some type of input in the product or the marketing tactic that we're going to use or promotion, where they have some ownership of it and getting them excited about it. And I think, one of the things me and Tina were just talking about was, where we send all this stuff out and it's being communicated to GMs. And I looked at her emails and she's 100% correct. The problem is we have failed to create an emotional connection that they remember it, right? They're excited about it. So just because we communicated it doesn't mean it's solved for our internal marketing strategy or plan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the things, so to your point, Crystal, like the company meetings to me, if it's just about going through the motions, then it won't be impactful. But if you understand the emotional connection to getting your technicians bought into the culture and the marketing of your business, then they're going to be great advocates for you externally.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started Lemon Seed, I shared this with you the other day. When I first started Lemon Seed, I was shocked at the amount of contractors that would say, "Well, my team will never go for that." I was like, "What does that even mean?" Right? Like, how do you not get people excited that? And again, these are just examples, but we're going to do, if you buy one of our top tier systems, we're doing a vacation, or we've got 0% financing for 60 months, and we never offered that. Like, this is a big deal. I was always like, man, we weren't going to go ask by committee. We weren't going to go ask all of our technicians, are y'all okay if we do this, right? It was brought to them with excitement and enthusiasm, and to be honest, with confidence, like this is going to work. Y'all are performance paid. This is going to help y'all upsell this. And it was presented in a way that I thought was clear. It gave them vision, and it got them excited. So then when I now was working with people that I was like, what do you like? Y'all presented it wimpy, like little wimps. Like, what do y'all think? And it just never would take off. So,
Yeah, no, yeah.
I
No, I
think a
think
lot
at the end of the day, um, it's the ability to have influence, right? And that starts with trust with your organization, and you'll continue to build upon that trust. And so coming out of the gate immediately with a bunch of different tactics or crazy games that you're trying to get on, like in your company meetings, there's a step function to that to get them bought in and culturally. And so I think me as an operator and building a team, you asked earlier, about, what would I do at a $5 million business? And I think it's like, that's where I mean, you got to start building a team. You got to start building things that take you out of your comfort zone, and you got to start hiring for your weaknesses. And if everybody on your team is like-minded and everybody on your team has the same skill set, because you're a master plumber and you think that your service manager should be a master plumber, and you wish your call center manager had plumbing experience. The reality is you're going to have a bunch of plumbers that don't understand marketing, don't understand customer service. So, my goal as I begin to, scale the business is I got to find people that that has different skill sets than me, that has, that we can have healthy disagreements. And at the end of the day, we come in my office and we fight it out, and we come out with the best ideas, and we walk out of this office united and supporting one another.
Yeah, I think that is one of people's biggest struggles. We'll kind of jump to that for next, but when do we do different things, right? That's one of the biggest questions I think too that I get asked. Like, Crystal, when should I open a new location? When should I add a new service? When do I add an internal marketer? So, I call them hurdles. Like, I feel like I watch contractors try to get to the 1 million, and they try to get to the 3 million, into 5, 7, 10, 15, 20. And, there's always to get to that next hump or get over that next hurdle, you have to do things you've never done before, ways that you've never done it. Right. So, when I remember when we got ready to add plumbing, and it was because of market share, right? We were kind of landlocked. We had opened up, and we needed to add another service to continue to grow. But I know you have some philosophies kind of in your head, and they're yours, but they worked, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think having confidence that what we're doing today and where we're doing it, where we're executing at a high level. So that my problem, if I had problems, not that you don't have some problems, but I didn't have structural problems, and I typically didn't have key personnel problems when I went and started something new, right? Whether that was add plumbing, greenfield a location, or go do an acquisition. But to be honest, I think during those periods of growth, they were calculated. I couldn't afford any of the things that we did. Meaning I didn't write a check. We had a bet on the performance of the moves that we were going to make, and which were scary, right? And so there's this calculated risk that I think people have to get comfortable with as well when they're growing a business. And and there was no plan B for me. We burned the boats, and it was like, hey, we're going for broke. And when we added plumbing, we bought a small plumbing business. We bought a plumbing business, in a market that had greenfield a few years prior, and then brought plumbing back to our two major markets, which meant that one year we added 26 trucks. So we put 26 new trucks on the road that year, and we burned the boats. It was like everybody on my team was fully committed to what we were embarking on. And we had confidence that we were operating a plumbing business at a high level in a market we were already in. But to say that I had enough money to put 26 trucks on the road and make payroll for all that, no. We burned the boats and went for it.
Yeah, and you cast the vision though. I remember there was 4 of us at that time that would kind of sit around a table and brainstorm, come up with ideas and things. And one thing that was always an easier step, again, now I was a team member, right? So put me in that seat, but is when you come and say, this is what we need to do and here's why, then it kind of would spark me to go, okay, this is not really a for debate. We're going here, we're going to burn the boats, right? Go for broke. We're going to do it. It inspired me to think deeper about the marketing. That was my role, right? So how do I think deeper about the marketing? How do I justify the marketing? How do I, I go into creative mode, right? And the same thing, our guy that was over sales, he would go into coaching mode, right? So again, that was because of leadership, through the whole process. And so, some of us, some of the contractors that I work with, just they have paralysis by analysis. They just overthink it, or they think they don't have money, like you mentioned. And so just the encouragement to take calculated risk, and then watching your team, like I mentioned, rise to the occasion, let them come to the table and let them lead. Some of them I think are control freaks, right? They're at 5 million. They know they need to let go of a few things, but letting go is scary, and can be really intimidating, I think, to them. And so, well, Trey, do you have some like key thoughts? Like, let's talk about an internal marketer. How do you approach that? Like, I know that McWilliams has always done that kind of different. I was added when I think we were about $3 or $4 million in our Lufkin location. They added my position. And then what do you think about that? I get asked this question a lot.
Yeah, well, I think it's every different stage is different. Like, it depends on what your needs are and the overall chemistry of your team and the strengths of them. What we needed at $4 million, was, a marketer. And then we looked at marketing as, a couple of different things, but we looked at this grassroots piece that was like, community marketing. And then also how do we leverage that internal marketing to our people? And then, Crystal wore many hats beyond that. So I think there was a lot of things that you done at that stage, and you wasn't just a pure community marketer. So I think there's like this evolution of like, there's these roles. And I think in a larger organization, you may only wear one hat of that one role. But in these smaller ones, you may be over the call center, brand ambassador, community marketer, AR. But really what it is, it's about identifying that there is a opportunity and that you want this piece, this role in your business every day, right? And like you see value in brand ambassador, community marketer, or whatever you want to call it. So it doesn't mean you got to go with a dedicated one. I think when do you add these things? I think when you're looking at your business and when you start building a real plan, right? Like a 1 year, 3 year, and a 5 year plan, and you see opportunity or you see fear of certain things failing, you're going to prioritize or you're going to rank when certain roles should be put into place. And I think those roles early on are very important, that they either create revenue or save money, right? So it's very hard to have a job that doesn't justify one of those two things, even in a larger organization, but you can get away with a little more in a larger organization at times. So when do I add people? I think it's having a clear line of sight of what success looks like and how they're going to and how they're going to impact that. And when I had that, I moved.
Yeah, and like even like general manager, like right now I have a lot of contractor friends that they still act as like the general manager, so they might be managing a few lead people, but there's really nobody between them and like the field technicians. And so they'll be at like a $3 million, $4 million plumbing company, and they're like, when do I add in that level of, and I'm like, I don't know that there's a solid like, at 3 million. That's I don't know that that's there. It's all about where you're going, where are you headed.
Yeah, I think probably not what anybody wants to hear, but I was at the helm of operations, running it day in, day out as the general manager till we were 15 million in revenue. And it wasn't until I started adding other locations that I turned over the day-to-day operator. So like I opened up business and closed business every day till we were 15 million in revenue. And even at that point, I was still shepherding that. So, everybody's going to be a little different in this role, meaning if you're not a great general manager and you're great, but you got to be something, you got to add value to your business. You can't be dead weight. $4 million doesn't support an absentee owner, not at a decent wage. So I think it's like you just got to figure out, when I was growing the business, I was very active. I was doing way more than just my job. So that's the only way we could afford to grow, because, if I got to pay a general manager $150,000 a year to be underneath me on a job I could do, like that $150,000 is pretty impactful to growth that I can be deploying. So I think that's where, those are decisions that, you got to make as an operator and owner. Is if you want to start layering your business up to make your life easier and have less responsibility, the cost of that is cash, and cash being redeployed, strategically, prevents growth if you're not willing to do that.
That's right. That's right. Well, so in the chat right now, I'm getting ready to wrap up. So if you have questions for Trey, I'd love for you to pop them in the chat right here. I will take care of like asking them. But while y'all are putting your questions, if you have any, I'll tell you. So Madison's going to pop in here Trey's email. If any of you have any questions or thoughts or want to visit with Trey, feel free to email him. He relatively will get back to you, but he likes to, chat when he can and help out where he can. And so I love you giving you guys the ability to do that. But I also want to say, it's not easy. What we do as small business owners, me at Lemon Seed, you guys at your own companies, it's hard. It's hard to lead. And there's never like solid answers. Everything's a gamble, a calculated risk, as Trey said earlier. And so I just want to encourage you guys, like so many of you are such great operators, such great people. You have really good teams on your side. So, and right now it's been a down year. It's been a struggle year. And so I think that some of you really get down on yourself and really, I want to encourage you guys that like, it's par for the course of owning a business and it's learning how to lead and guide through chaos. And so like I said, I just encourage you to, give yourself a little grace, but still lead where you can. Also, last little mention here, Lemon Seed Conference is coming up in January. Trey plays a part of that conference with me and Emily. This year, it's all marketing focused. And so every speaker that we're bringing is helping you build marketing strategies. We're bringing people from outside the industry. We actually we've gotten a good amount already registered. And so we like to keep it nice and intimate. It's very, come and network with other real contractors in the business. And we're going to have some fun parties, but some really good time just networking together, learning from each other. It's the most affordable conference out there. So go check us out there at our landing page for that. But Trey, any last words? Any other thoughts?
No, I think at the end of the day, it's just being committed to come to work every day and improving your business. And, it's to your point, it's a tough business. It's a lot of moving parts and it's pretty sophisticated, but knowing what you're working for, and it'll keep you motivated.
Yeah, and if you need help with the marketing strategy side of your business, if that's one thing that I could get off of your plate, Lupita would love to mention, visit with you about what working with Lemon Seed looks like. Again, everything I learned from working alongside Trey at the heating and air conditioning company, and now for 5 or 6 years, I've been doing it for other contractors. Lupita can meet with you and show you just what does it look like to work with Lemon Seed. What is that investment? What is our end goal? Our end goal is to help you have a good stack of vendors that help you meet your goals of lead generation. We want to make sure that you have the right vendors doing the right things at the right time and everything's on brand for long-term strategic growth. And so we would love to visit with you. Lupita's there. So lots of opportunities to interact with Lemon Seed today. Trey's email is there. Thank you so much for joining Trey and I on this Friday morning still. We hope you enjoyed this, and we will be sending this out really soon. Thank you again for trusting Lemon Seed. And Trey, thank you for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.